Here's everything you need to know about the Seven as of Chapter 3 Season 4. At some point the Foundation discovered the 0 point and together along with 6 other members created the Seven. The Foundation, the Paradigm, the Visitor, the Scientist, the Origin, the Order and the Imagined. With their main job to liberate the 0 point and free it from the Imagined Order's grasp. So for Sisters, the Order and the Imagined actually was part of the Imagined Order with their father, Geno, yes the leader of the Imagined Order. Geno actually created the Sisters and genetically modified them to be absolutely perfect. Geno would eventually throw the Sisters into the loop and betted with other members of the inner circle that the Sisters would make it out first. And they didn't. When the two sisters would eventually make it out the loop, Geno would replace them with their snapshots, which is created when someone leaves the loop. Talk about tough love. The Origin was the Cube King, the king of the last reality, but he didn't realise the Cube's devour, so he left them. But freedom didn't last long for the then Cube King, or the former Cube King, as the Imagined Order found him and captured him and made him their prisoner, along with another member of the Seven, the Paradigm. And more on that later. During Season 3, a meteorite was spotted in the skies over Athena. The launch to Season 4 would reveal the meteorite crashing at Dusty Depot, creating a divot and eventually revealing a strange capsule inside. This would later be revealed to be the Visitor. Where he came from, we still don't know, but somewhere out there in the known and unknown Omniverse. As Season 4 was drawing to a close, he escaped and made his way to the villain's lair. At the time, the Islanders, the Loopers, were in production of a film. The Visitor would end up building a rocket, a countdown would then appear in game, and soon the rocket would be ready for liftoff. This would coincide with Fortnite's first live event, the Blast Off. And there it is, the start of the Fortnite storyline, the event that caused a domino effect, and we're still feeling the ramifications of this event till this day. The Visitor created loads of little whiffs, maybe to build up momentum before creating the big sideways rift that allowed Kevin onto the island. And Kevin was of course from the last reality. The Paradigm was introduced to us in the final few weeks of Season X as a limited time skin for the Season X event, but storyline wise she was involved in the Season 9 final showdown event, piloting the mech to defeat the Devourer. The Imagined Order was happy to just sit back and let everyone on the island die at the hands of the Devourer. And the Paradigm couldn't sit back and just let that happen. The Imagined Order agreed to let Paradigm deal with the Devourer just in case it threatened the 0 point and the Imagined Order's divine plan. Or the Imagined Order would have used a doomsday machine. So for IO, Singularity and the Paradigm constructed the mech, the Paradigm would kill the Devourer with Singularity's sword, just to make sure everyone knew the Imagined Order were perceived to save the island. She would launch to the Ice Moon where the threat originally came from, but crashed on the Ice Moon. She would be saved by the mech and her suit going into status for several years. Paradigm's action though caused the 0 point to still destabilise, and this was not the Imagined Order's plan. They needed more time, so they manipulated the Seven to do their bidding for them. Season X began showing the meteorite in the sky in some form of suspended animation, floating above Dusty Depot, and the divot was gone, like we almost went back in time. Like Season 4, it would turn out that there was another capsule inside that meteorite. It was the Scientist. Like the Visitor, would eventually escape. The Scientist was already hard at work making sure the Singularity was paused, and it looked like time had completely frozen. The 0 point stopped exploding. These actions are referenced in the Scientist tapes. I, Us, You arrived outside the loop at the exact moment of expansion. This effectively paused the Singularity, giving us time to create the devices needed to synchronise the junction. When he brought everyone outside the loop, which you see in the Season X trailer, the Singularity paused, giving the Seven the time to synchronise the junctions, the Rift Beacons. The Scientist would soon start construction of these Rift Beacon devices, and with him along with the Seven, orchestrated a plan to try and save the whole of reality and the whole of the Omniverse. During the season from these Rift Beacon POIs, we would actually travel in them and we would collect tapes. What the 7 of us is attempting is very risky. I suspect that they are not the only ones watching, but it must be done or we lose the bridge forever. I speculate that no one calculated the formation of the island, that interdimensional matter collisions would resolve rather than push. Now that I witnessed it firsthand, it is obvious that pinching alone made it inevitable. When I hear this again, would it help me remember? Or once looped, will be just as muted as the others? No matter, it seems the lengthy precautions work. The film was a success. I, Us, You arrived outside the loop at the exact moment of expansion. This effectively paused the Singularity, giving us time to create the devices needed to synchronise the junction. What I didn't factor in was the only way to trigger the device was from within the loop itself, versus hasty and primitive recording, and why I find myself looped. Activate the beacon at the precise moment the timer reaches nothing. The 0 point must be contained once more. If they are correct, it will be the end. So we get some insight to what was going on that season. The Scientist created Rift Beacon devices and he had to be in a loop several times for this to work, but the last time he realised, oh my god, I actually have to be inside the loop to activate this. That's why in the tapes he's telling someone else to activate the beacon at the precise moment the timer reaches nothing. It would appear at certain points, if the 0 point is sealed or either paused, then reality 0 is inaccessible. So the scientists created these rift beacons to bring the rest of the 7 in. The moment the beacon was activated, all the other members of the 7 were able to access reality 0. Soon the day of the event will come, and the scientists along with the other members of the 7 who are now in reality 0, so they reanimated the meteorite. After they achieved this, they had to attempt to contain the 0 point within the bridge. The 0 point must be contained once more, but it would appear that the scientists didn't quite calculate everything. I was not alone, others were outside the loop. This was not calculated. The nothing is now inevitable. The matter of Athena was scattered. Over the next 3 days, the matter would reorganise to form a new island, or as we now know, islands. So with chapter 2 coming to an end, chapter 2 would just be around the corner. And we would not hear or see the 7 again for the next 6 seasons. But during the attack from Galactus, and after Jonesy literally almost tore the 0 point apart, the 0 point needed help. The 7 returned, or at least their leader, the Foundation. Jones of course disobeyed the orders from his leader and his friend Dr. Sloan to bring one of the members of the 7 back to the island. The Foundation was filled with rage, and this probably had something to do with the end event of chapter 1 and how the Imagine Order manipulated the 7 to carry out that event. But Jones screamed the words, "Geno, I can get you, Geno." Foundation says, what about the sisters? Jones says, I can get you all of them, but first we need to deal with that, and he points towards the 0 point. The Foundation of course obliges. He got to the 0 point and he said, I've never seen this level of entanglement. The Foundation then decides to bloom the 0 point, but it doesn't work out. The bloom starts to wilter and die, and then he decides to seal himself into the 0 point to contain the blast. The Foundation seals himself and the 0 point, and of course Jones trapped in the loop, but he said don't worry, we will find each other once again. This would eventually lead to the Foundation ending up in reality NF1935. He would come across Batman, who had been to reality 0 quite recently. After it appeared that they were at least on the same page after a little bit of a fight, the Foundation would help Batman in Metropolis to deal with a sideways rift, as the Imagine Order, Lex Luthor and Batman Who Laughs were all scheming together. With the Imagine Order evacuating the island in season 6, they made sure to leave Deathstroke in to manipulate Batman so they could put an anchor device on the 0 point so they could eventually travel back to reality 0. Because the Foundation knew this, I cut off their access to the 0 point by forming a spire around it. A sideways rift is their only option. Batman replies, I see, well I broke through your spire in order to come home. Foundation then replies, most of the Order had fled the island and the bridge. This must be their attempt to return and re-establish control. So yes, the 0 point, when the Spire sealed it, and when the 0 point was destabilising in Season X, was inaccessible either in or out. It was probably less to do with the fact it was destabilised and more to do with the fact that it was paused. After it was agreed they were on the same team, the Foundation would help Batman in Metropolis to deal with the sideways rift, as the Imagine Order, Lex Luthor and Batman were all scheming together. With Lex Luthor wanting to travel to reality 0 to take control, but the Foundation made sure to crack his visor, so if he entered the loop, he would succumb to the loop's effects. The Batman Who Laughs would make it through to the Fortnite island, and the Foundation and the Batman Who Laughs would actually meet in the final circle, a 1v1 situation, but the Foundation wasn't concerned. He knew when the loop was set, he would be fine because of his airtight suit. Until the Batman Who Laughs cracked the Foundation's visor. The Foundation at that point knew he had to win. If he didn't win, he'd be trapped inside the loop and he would feel the effects, forgetting all his memories prior to entering the loop, so the Foundation had to win. Winning would mean he would leave the loop, which he managed to do. But a quick flashback back to the Zero Crisis event, the Foundation promised he would go and find Jones, which he then goes to do. And the next time we would see the 7 is at the Chapter 2 end event, where the Cube Queen was trying to open a pure portal to the Sideways Rift to bring her Cube Legion, her Cube army, and to take over this reality and make sure nothing remains. Jones at this point was a little tied up with Dr. Sloan. Then the Foundation would burst through the door. I would have to assume at this point, to be fair, that the 7 presumed that the blue cube would do its job enough to deal with the last reality, long enough for them to flip the island. Jones and the Foundation would escape the angry Sloan and would go forth to the bridge, taking out more IO guards. The Foundation said to Jones, I'm taking us to the other side, which Jones is pretty surprised about. Once this is done, Foundation enacts Phase 2. With the island beginning to rotate, the scientist and the visitor make sure the loopers and non-loopers are safe in the bridge, as there's no guarantee that the loop would flip, and if you left on that side, well, I don't know what would happen. I would only surmise on that. The scientist is pretty sure they'll be safe inside the bridge as the rotation has happened, but then a caretaker smashes the glass, with the bridge soon filling up with water. Next season, Chapter 3, Season 1, left the Imagined Order completely off the island. This left the Seven able to take full control of the new map, Artemis. This was a big victory for the Seven, but the scientist did heed a warning. Paradigm, it's me. I'm guessing you heard what happened. Obviously, we have more ambitious goals than just simply flipping the island. That was just one step in a scrupulous planned attack that would have reduced the Imagined Order to a smoking crater. To put it mildly, but the reality left us exposed and overextended. If they manage to counterattack before we recover, it's over. All of it. So on this new island called Artemis, we got our first look at the Seven in forms of totems where all their sort of signs were revealed to us. And soon the Seven and the Imagined Order would be heading to war. Now at the back end of Chapter 3 Season 1, earthquakes were starting to be felt throughout the island. This was the Imagined Order drilling through as they looked to take massive parts of the island back under their control. At this point, the scientist was trying desperately to contact Paradigm, but there was no answer apart from a ping. With the Imagined Order coming through to the fortress, they then took the Rave Cave, Tilted Towers, Corny Crossroads, part of Sleepy Sounds, Risky Wheels and Kondo. Throughout the season, the Seven would regain some control over the island that the Imagined Order took off them. In my opinion, this was all a distraction technique for the Imagined Order so they could focus on what was to come with the Collider. So the Imagined Order was pretty happy to lose some ground here and there. But the Imagined Order sought the world by disabling building, and the Seven then had to get it back. And then throughout the season, the Seven would fight the Imagined Order at certain POIs that we had to try and claim back. And slowly but surely, the Imagined Order started to retreat. Kondo, Corny and Tilted would be reclaimed by the Seven in the following weeks. But the Imagined Order would soon reveal their plans for the Collider. The Seven would actually find them out in advance. You also have to remember that this season the Seven's makeup was very different. As well as the original Seven members, you had the Seven resistant members as well. You had Jones. Mostly members made up of the food battalions were also leaders of the 7 battalion armies. As this was going on, attempts were made to locate the mech, as members of the 7 believed they needed the mech to beat this upcoming threat of the Collider. But it would need a large power source. Now during the end event of Chapter 2, the Origin managed to hack the Imagined Order database and found out when Galactus came to Reality Zero, he actually dislodged a fragment of the 0 point, and if they were able to find this fragment, that would be enough power to power the mech. The Origin knew that it landed in Reality 616. So sent Spider-Man as well as Jones and the Imagined to go and find it, as well as getting multiple Marvel characters to help with the 7 as well. So they joined the Resistant 7 army to fight against the Imagined Order, when Jones, the Imagined, Wolverine and Spider-Man stayed in Reality 616 to try and find the Zero Shard. Eventually Dr. Doom would get it, who was introduced to the inner circle of the Imagined Order. It would turn out eventually Dr. Doom would travel to the ice moon of Reality Zero when they would run into the other team of the Scientist, the Visitor and Iron Man, when they would discover that Paradigm is alive, which shocked the Foundation, but the Scientist knew that the Paradigm was still alive. He at least hoped for it, and it wasn't Paradigm's suit sending messages. For Imagined, Wolverine, Spider-Man along with Shuri managed to defeat Doom. They managed to get the Zero Shard out of his grasp, and Spider-Man web slings it closer to them and they claim the Zero Shard. The 7 then gather intel that the Collider is about to go off, which could end all reality. John Jones, now calling himself the Legend, and Origin introduces us to the Paradigm, who is going to be piloting the mech. So we the Loopers along with Paradigm travel from the Ice Moon back to the confines of the Loop to battle against the Imagined Order. With the Imagined Order throwing everything they got, the fortress turns out to be a massive laser beam that does disorientate the mech for a while, but the mech manages to get back on top with its own beam. But the relentless attack of the Imagined Order does finally affect the mech, but Peely is there to save the day, who had been learning to drive for the majority of that season. Thanks to Peely, the mech, fully now recharged, manages to make it to the Collider and in touching distance before it turns out to be a trap. It's possible, along with the Panther, that the Imagined Order found out some possible information that the 7 were going to attack, so this was a trap. With the 0 point heading towards the Collider, there wasn't much harm left for the 7. Us the Loopers and Paradigm trying to repower the mech. Can I stop you right there? If you haven't read the 5th issue of Zero War, please stop watching now. But if you have, enjoy. Left off with Jones and the Foundation heading to take care of Dr. Sloan, At this point there was another ground team, the Order, the Imagined, and some other members of the Seven and the Resistant Army. And they run into Geno, the leader of the Imagined Order, who pleaded to his daughters they needed to be taught a lesson. After this heart-to-heart between the Imagined and her father, the Order flies in, and they're soon hanging off the edge of the massive drop down to the bottom of the bridge. The Imagined and Geno soon fall to the 0 point, the uncontrolled 0 point, and they leave reality 0 and travel to another reality. Jones and the Foundation goes through the 0 point, this time controlled, to the reality Geno and the Imagined travel to, but it turns out they're far too late. The uncontrolled 0 point has started scattering their matter across the known omniverse. It turns out while the Imagined Order may do some bad stuff, that Geno felt their intentions with the 0 point was right, and now it's the Seven's turn. Geno hopes that the Foundation is indeed right and his way is best. If not, it could be the end, and they soon dissipate. Jones and the Foundation travel back through the 0 point, and victory is secured for the Seven. But during the celebrations, a new biome blossomed in Artemis. The reality tree started to drain power from the 0 point. The scientist was confused about this. He did massive amount of research and got Bush Ranger to go and tell him what the tree is on about. It turns out darkness, 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 complete darkness. The scientist soon discovers this new substance, which leads him to some concern. The 0 point summons some relics from different realities, but this appears at the moment to be a little bit too late. The Origin, the Visitor, and the scientist head underground, and the Paradigm is unaware of this taking place, but eventually the Paradigm finds them. The scientist is then trying to analyse the chrome, but unfortunately the chrome started to consume the lab, the scientist, the Origin, and the Visitor. And just before it managed to consume the Paradigm escaped, and Amy aligned her with reality 659, which I believe to be the Paradigm's home reality. We start Chapter 3, Season 4 without the Seven in reality 0. We presume all members of the Seven to be consumed by the Chrome apart from Paradigm, who is in reality 659. If you enjoy lore, storyline and theory videos, you may enjoy this video about a possibility of a new map. It's been your boy Mr. J. Next time, bye bye.